All right, we can commence our workshop on the EDC. Jen, you told me you had a speaker?
Yes, sir. Would you like that now?
Sure.
Toby Cole.
It's all right. It's casual meeting.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. As you mentioned, my name is Toby Cole. I'm with J&N Grease Service. We're a company here in Menifee. We employ approximately 25 to 30 people. And it just so happens that our business is in the EDC. That's why I'm here, because I'd like to get more information on that. And the main purpose of my visit is because we are doing our due diligence on expanding our business. And my understanding right now with the planning department is that the expansion may not necessarily fit into the new zoning that the EDC is going to bring in, even though that's kind of unknown at this time. So I was hoping to maybe give a little bit of background on what we do and then what the plans are moving forward, and maybe have an impact on what is allowed or not allowed in the EDC, if that makes sense.
What did you do again?
Did they not have an application with us already up there?
There was an application to allow the Grace Recycling Facility in an existing group of buildings. They now want to expand that business, not necessarily
Okay.
square footage wise, but I think what you're doing is changing, right?
Well, that's kind of, the way it works is we render grease. It's basically an inedible food product from restaurants, from manufacturing facilities. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It's cooking oil. So, you know, Carl's Jr., all those restaurants fry the French fries and so forth. We take that grease and we render it, and then we sell it to biodiesel manufacturers. It goes into animal feed products. So we're already rendering, but we're rendering grease. We also render animal lard, which is part of that process as well. We're permitted through the state of California to do that process. However, we want to bring into that process rendering of meat scraps. And what that means is basically we already have the product at our site. So we go to local butchers, supermarkets. When they cut up the meat, there's small pieces of fat or scrap meat that they would typically throw away. We take that, and right now we're licensed to haul that to other rendering companies within the state. We would like to obtain a permit through the state of California to start rendering that product on our own property, but part of that process is to get the city approval prior to doing so. So I do want to bring up, you know, one point that many people don't understand, and rendering is different things. A lot of the other renderers who are in LA County actually render dead animals as well. That isn't something we're interested in doing. It's solely for the scrap meat products that we pick up from the local supermarkets and butchers throughout Southern California. And again, we already have the product at our facility. We bring it in on the different trucks. It gets put into different containers, roll-off containers and so forth. So I think the environmental impact, the processing impact of adding the technology to our facility is going to be negligible. So there's no more trucks, there's no more nuisance. It's just getting the approval to do so.
How many places like you are there around here?
Rendering for the scrap meat?
Well, I know of J&N Grease Services because I've had to call you on other properties to
Okay.
have grease taken out of grease interceptors.
Okay.
And when I recall trying to find somebody to do it, I don't recall there being a lot of people around. Are there a lot of other people around here that do it?
There are a lot of people that pick up the waste meat product, but they don't render it themselves. It's quite an investment to put in the technology to do so. It's basically just a thermal process, very low temperature thermal process. It's about 240 degrees. It separates the water from the fat and from the grease, basically turns it into grease. So to answer your question, they're mostly in LA. I think there's a couple in San Bernardino, but as far as locally here in Riverside County, to the best of my knowledge, there aren't any.
So are you rendering it into more grease that's used for biofuel?
Correct.
Okay.
Basically, you're going to end up with two products. You're going to end up with a yellow grease, and then you're going to end up with bone meal. If there's little pieces of bone, that actually comes out as a separate product and goes into animal feed.
So a question I have, with your expansion, would you expand on your existing land that you
No.
have, or you'd buy an adjoining property and then expand?
We
on
already
it?
have the square footage. It's, like I said, we've been doing our due diligence on this for some time. We have the square footage. All we have to do is actually purchase the equipment to put inside the building. So it's really no expansion, no more square footage or anything.
Where is it located?
We're in the northern part of Menifee. It's basically Highway 74 and Sherman Road, right off the 215.
Mr. Leclerc?
I would caution the commission in regards to speaking of specifics at this point. What the gentleman is asking for is an amendment or your consideration of an amendment to the land use chart that would be specifically on page 15, industrial uses, in reference to light manufacturing of food, lumber, wood, and paper products, where he's asking that in the general terms, that the kind of activity that they are conducting be considered as a use that is allowed or conditionally allowed in this chart. Specifics should not be addressed for this particular use because this is not a public hearing for that particular kind of activity. But that would be where you would consider placing such an activity.
Would you mind repeating that section?
It's within the land use table. It's on page 15 of the material, and it's under the industrial uses section of the chart.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, thank you, Toby.
Okay, so just, where do I go from here? Is there a?
Well, we're in the process of defining the uses right now. So as we work through it, we'll probably discuss those types of uses when we get to page 15. We're gonna start at
Okay.
page 1 and start
Very
kind of
good.
diving through this,
All
so.
right. Thank you for your
As we
time.
work through. Thank you. Any other speakers?
No, sir.
All right. All right, well, after talking to Ms. Sobek, I don't feel so bad. I didn't get all the way through all this, to be honest with everybody. It's quite a lot of information, and when I started going through it, I found one section that referenced another and a lot of tying back and forth. So without getting through the entire document, I don't know that I can give enough feedback to conclude the item, but we can definitely get into it. I don't know how the rest of the commission did with it, and you know, this is probably a pretty pivotal thing with our city. We want to make sure we get it right, so.
Yes, this is an important chapter for your development code. I want to be sure I understand when you say references back and forth within this chapter? Or
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
maybe one section will reference a table where I might have a question, and, you know, if this gets amended, how does it affect this, and, you know,
Right.
that sort of
Okay.
thing.
And I want to, once again, comment, as you authorized, as you allowed at your last meeting, Commissioner Phillips had gone through in detail, and he and I came to an understanding of some changes for this. Is there a way we can,
Yeah.
the sun? Yeah,
Sorry.
that's,
You can just,
we have curtains right over.
no, it's okay.
They have a
Last time it
mechanism
was
to
me
deal with it.
coming through there.
A little bit, it will be you.
We have worked on this and made a number of changes from the version that you had received a little while ago. I believe that it has been modified to the better, and as you had indicated, you can just start on page 1 and work your way through. Although we would like it to be a relatively quick process to get it through this workshop discussion and then on to a public hearing, you do, of course, have all the opportunity in the world to discuss it in as much detail as you need to in order to feel comfortable to move it to that public hearing.
Well, like what I was saying is, we got 3 drafts. I started going into the first draft really well and had made comments and marked things, and then we got the second one, and now we got the third one, which is, I want to just thank Commissioner Phillips for helping with this. But again, I haven't had that to go through all of it either, back and forth a little bit, and I feel like it's an important chapter as well, so I think we need to be really thorough. And just getting it on the late notice was just, and I know that's because everybody was trying to help and him making the revisions and stuff, but it's looking good. So, but, and it's okay, I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
complaining,
leave it.
I just, I think it's great. It's just,
Okay, the reason for the 3 drafts was I did 20 pages, then another 20 pages, and then I just said, I'll just go ahead and do the whole thing. And I did the whole thing. That was the reason for the 3rd draft, because I
Right.
completed it over the weekend since my team was losing. There's no sense in looking at
Well,
TV. So-
and I'm grateful for the work that you put into this. Just the 3rd draft, haven't got to really dive into it much
Yeah.
since yesterday.
That was the one that we had both worked on.
Yeah,
So-
so this is a good thing.
It feels really good. Can't you just test it on
I had some fundamental concerns in there too, so, you know, what,
If you aren't prepared tonight, which is understandable, to go through it page by page, then there may be some things just like that are fundamental concerns, fundamental questions that we can discuss at this point in time, and then depending upon the consensus of the commission, go back in and change and give you a 4th version, but some correction to that. Because I could imagine, because there are several things in here that need decisions relative to who's going to make what decision at what level. And so that's an alternative for your workshop tonight as well.
you know, if it pleases the commission, I'll just dive into some fundamental questions I have, and if anybody wants, just jump in. And so right off the bat, if you go to the description for Northern Gateway on page 3, it talks about a lot of different uses being allowed in there, and specifically about the middle of the paragraph, the EDC in G is envisioned as a business park area providing with intensive industrial uses. But later on, or earlier on in there, it talks about how the EDC areas are going to offer buffers between different uses. So we're calling out a specific use in there that is quantified as being intensive. So how is an intensive use considered a buffer?
You can create by the review of that development the buffer space and the buffering between by calling for landscaping, walls, separation for parking that's needed for the intensive industrial use, for outdoor storage or lesser, or buildings that are support to the intensive commercial use. Because you will be reviewing those commercial uses, you have the opportunity to achieve both of those goals by having both the intensive use at certain portions of the property, yet mitigated by lesser uses and parking, landscaping, so forth, and just flat out buffer zone in between that and the residential, or any residential. You also have to consider that the area that's located is adjacent to Paris, is adjacent to the city of Paris boundary, which intends to have commercial and heavier uses on that side of that boundary line as well.
I've heard mixed baggage on that north end. What's approved? Do we know if anything's approved along Ethan
To the north in Paris, there's a specific plan. There's a variety of uses in that specific plan. You might remember, I think we showed you it when we were processing our general plan. There are 2 approved tentative tract maps in that area for your kind of standard single-family residential, and those are, I think they're both west of Murrieta Road, and they're processing their final maps now. They're smaller. I think one is about 80 lots and one is, I think 130 or so. So they're not large developments.
Any commercial or industrial uses? Specific plans or anything like that on there?
Not in the city. There have been, you approved the Pacific Mobile structures on
I mean,
Murrieta.
just what's in Paris, what we don't see on our side of the map.
What's in Paris? I don't know of any projects other than catty corner to the city border, north of Ethanak and west of Getz. There's a KB track, but Paris hasn't sent me any projects within the Green Valley specific plan. I think a lot of that has to do with we're just getting way on the Romoland Homeland Master Drainage Plan area.
Right.
And that's what's really gonna open up development in that area, and then we'll see stuff. And the city of Paris has been really good about sending us projects, even when they're in the entitlement stage. They don't just send us the hearing notices so we know 20 days before the meeting. They've been sending us project transmittals, so.
And you always have the opportunity, since it does reference envisions as a business park area providing, quote, intensive on, end quote, industrial uses, you simply strike intensive. If your goal is to meter down some of the physical aspects of it, then that one particular word can be removed.
No, it was just clarification.
I actually would agree with you on that, because I don't think we're looking for heavy industrial there, we're looking for light industrial,
Mhm.
right? So I agree,
We could even put the word light industrial in.
I would prefer the word light industrial rather than intensive.
Okay.
But, in fact, one thing, could we introduce the attorney?
Yeah,
I don't
sorry.
know. He's sitting over there real
Who's looking-
quiet.
Who's looking at us over
Good
there?
guy.
My name's Ajit Thind. I'm the new assistant city attorney, spelled Ajit. Been working at Rattan & Tucker for 4.5 years. I'm the assistant city attorney in San Clemente, and deputy city attorney in Laguna Beach, and excited to get to know you all better and work with you in the future.
Could you spell your name again? Ajit?
Ajit, A-J-I-T.
Ajit, and then your,
Last name is Thind, T-H-I-N-D.
okay, can I keep this?
Sure,
I'll get another one from him.
plenty of those. So nice to meet you all.
Welcome aboard, G. In that same section there, and this is kind of where I was going earlier, Charles, when there's a lot of back and forth. Holding on to section A there, if you go to page 19, there's the graph, table 9.28-C. And it talks about, it's the land use matrix, it talks about the different uses that are allowed in each one of these areas. Specifically in the Northern Gateway, the matrix has it called out as residential 5% and industrial, the other 95% more or less, with no commercial office or business park. But in the description here, it says, this vision does not preclude the establishment of related retail or other commercial activities. So they don't coincide.
Correct.
So which is it?
You have a choice.
Okay.
I would think we would want at least the immediate, what is that? Call it the northeastern corner of that, to be some retail, so it'll mirror and pull off of the Winco and all that there. We'll be
Mhm.
able to benefit from that traffic. So I would think that we'd want some commercial in there, or off, well, I would call it retail. What are you defining as retail? The commercial here on the table on page 19?
Right. Retail will be considered commercial.
So I would think we would want to allocate something to some retail there, because I would imagine someone's going to develop that little corner with some retail on it.
And you're going to want to use generic terms, 10%, 15%, 20%. And these are maximums and these are mixtures of things, so
But here you're
10 to
at-
20% would be easily accomplished in this scheme.
So when we say 5%, 10%, we're talking about the entire Northern Gateway segment.
Yes.
So again, I haven't gotten all the way through this, can any one project take all of that 5 or 10 or 15% for themselves and leave everybody else with nothing?
Yes.
Okay.
And then, but
Kind
you
of
would have to
first come,
review
first
that
served.
project, yes. And then if such a project were to come in, and then another project were to come in with something that was acceptable to the community, along with that project, the city could process a general plan amendment to change those, or a development code amendment to change those criteria to allow it. But for the moment, what we're trying to do in this chart is be consistent with what I believe is the intent of the general plan in separating those land use categories. And you could, again, you can use generic numbers. We use 10, 20, 30, 10, 20, 25, 30, 35% in this chart. And it wouldn't be unusual to have, because again, they're generic things, calling for, 0 to 25% for a commercial office and business park, so that you can have that mixture. Because it is an unusual area that's got a lot of variety to it. And to restrict it to 95% industrial considering what's going to be around it in the adjoining city, considering what's already there in the county relative to the park, the recreational activity, recreational functions and so forth, and anticipated residential discussions and supportive commercial, 0 to 25% would not be unusual numbers for those NAs.
So if we put 0 to 20%, 25%, is this table have the same teeth as, say, land use or zoning code? In other words, if someone came in on a project and say they bought the whole thing up and said, we want to put all commercial in there,
Mhm.
could they do it because without a zoning or a general plan amendment? Isn't this a guide, does this have the same teeth and authority, we must follow it like a zoning?
This is the development code. These are the standards that must be met. If someone were to come in with a project that the city felt was appropriate for that area and was 100% of the area, at the same time as that request would come in for review, either the applicant or the city would process a development code amendment to change
Okay.
those numbers.
Okay.
The reason I asked that question earlier was because initially when we talked about the EDC and the general plan, we talked about not allowing any one project to take all of the
dominate.
allocation,
Mhm.
because then it removes the capability of the flow of everything to have it all kind of tie together. So if there's one residential component on the side, you eliminate that kind of mixed use look.
Well, and isn't that the first off-ramp as you come in to our city?
Mhm.
You know, I mean, do we want just industrial right there? I mean, you've already got a gas station, we've got houses.
Well, your general plan talks about that. That's where this language comes from. So yes, in the grand scheme of things, that's where light industrial uses were anticipated. So you cannot, through this document, without going back and changing the general plan, exclude industrial
No,
activity.
no, I'm not saying to exclude, but I like the idea to have some mix in there as
Mhm.
well.
But having said that, if you, like where Matt brought up the word intensive, and I suggested changing it to light, here it says intensive industrial uses, I would add wording to that sentence that says, with a small portion of commercial / retail, see table 9.28C, and then amend 9.28C.
Well, you don't need to reference the table, and I'd be concerned with putting in language that says small. If this simply says what the general intent of that section is, and your table puts criteria in, again, suggesting the 0 to 25% for the 3 NAs, then that gives you as the commission in reviewing future projects that flexibility to approve or disapprove projects based upon their own merit.
Okay, I get concerned that a developer comes in, okay, give me your development code, to see what he can do.
Mhm.
And then he reads here, it says, light industrial. I guess I can't put something in there.
But it says does not include, or does not preclude the next sentence. Does not preclude
Oh,
the
okay,
establishment.
yeah. I understand, yeah, that's good, okay.
So there's a little window there, and then you
Little
just
window,
reference
okay.
that, you reference the table, and then they
Mhm.
they speak to each other.
Okay.
So 0 to 25 is appropriate? Is that what you're saying, or you
It
just?
wouldn't, my suggestion to you for generic terms is 0 to 25.
And this can be amended as needed, I assume?
Oh, yeah, this is a working draft for you to modify in order to have a document that you feel comfortable for staff to advertise a public hearing and you hold a public hearing.
Okay.
So what would that change the industrial to?
No, it doesn't have to, because you can still have up to 95%.
Oh.
These are ranges
Okay.
of allowed uses.
Okay.
Where's my markers?
Well, I think what Commissioner Sobek is saying is that, the sum of all these percentages max equal 100%.
And they don't have to.
Okay. All right.
Well, I think the scope of that area has changed since we did the general plan. Because Ethanek, part of the, even though from the east of the 215 towards Hammett, it was like a rural highway, and then the other way going west, it wasn't. But now it's gonna be a major thoroughfare with what they're doing to it. So that does change the scope of things, which would make it more advantageous to have the rest of this office, business park, industrial, commercial, and I would say even less residential, because a residential on this side could be used as like it says here, the district serves as a buffer and transition between basically across the street, the Home Depot and stuff, that Paris. So then we're using this as a buffer between Paris, and then we're gonna have to have another buffer between the residential and the Menifee.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Okay.
You have
That's
built
the
in
way,
here.
that's the way I read it earlier.
Right.
Yeah,
You have mechanisms in here to call for that buffering.
okay.
Okay.
So, and that's why on this chart, I'd like to include office and business park
This is
also.
part of Northern Gateway too, here, right? Or
Well,
just
that's office and business park there.
I understood it to be 0 to 25% for all three of those.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you wanted that?
And that's
Yeah.
why the discussion of more than 100% came up.
Chris just brought up a question here. On the map, it's got some EDC along current Highway 74. Is that included in the northern gateway?
Yes.
That is, so that
Mhm.
stretch on Ethanak and the other parts
Right.
also, okay. All right. And then the county's long-term plan there, well, the long-term plan for the area is to fully improve Ethanak, correct? And
my
then
under-
realign Highway 74? I've heard that a couple of times.
I haven't heard anything on it in a few years, but back in 2003, when they did the general plan, it was, yes, to realign Highway 74 through Ethanak. And on the general plan, it's still major arterial, I believe.
Ethanak is still major trail, okay. What would be the catalyst for continuing with that thought process? I mean, moving along with upgrading Ethanak Road? Because that's gonna determine, what this is. If Highway 74 stays where it's at now, up at 74, or if the new thoroughfare to Hemet becomes Ethanak, it could determine which way we go with this property.
Well, I
Well,
think,
that may be too speculative at this point in time in order to plan for, plan your development code around it. If you want to explore that, you could explore it through the circulation element of the general plan, and if the circulation element classifies it as a higher roadway, then revisit the zoning and the standards for it. But at the moment, we're dealing with what's been adopted as the general plan and what's, at this point, the envisioned development for the area.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any comments going through the definitions of the
Well,
different areas?
I kind of have like, question, like on McCall. How far does that go?
On the what?
Like, like on McCall, does it go all the way down to Menifee Road? Are we talking all the way?
Well, these categories are coming right out of your general plan.
Yeah.
And the general plan map illustrates the extent of the 5 categories.
Anything to get that out?
Yeah.
But it does go all the way to,
It goes more or less to the hospital, I think. I believe this portion here is the hospital.
It'd be everything in purple, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So inclusive of the hospital. and
Can
that's
we
about it.
pull up a general plan map on there? Do you have that accessible at all?
Mhm.
that would be, because that was some of my questions as I was reading this.
Worst case, Lisa, you can put this on the slide.
No, she's got it.
Look at you.
So this is how it's broken down in the general plan itself, with the squares around the larger areas. Obviously, not every property within those, only the areas with the crosshatched purple are, and for some reason blue there, but it's only those crosshatched areas that are that are actually EDC corridor properties that will be subject to the 5 different zones that are being corrected in this chapter.
Can we get a printout of that?
Sure.
I'd like to add that to my pages.
I have one other comment on the very first 92.28.030, the very first definition. I think we're missing a big picture here. The purpose of this, primary purpose, what I see of the EDC in the whole political battle was to make sure we protect the revenue generation for the city. Now, and so I think we need to add wording here. It says, if you read, it's the following descriptions, and you go down to about the, so EDC designated areas are intended to provide a distinctive mix of uses that are complementary to surrounding land uses while providing distinguishable activity centers in the city. I think we need to add some wording similar to while maximizing revenue generation for city services. I think we're missing a big picture here of what the whole purpose of the EDC is.
Mhm.
So, what the commission thinks
Could
about
you
that.
say that again?
I was,
While
well,
maximizing?
maximizing revenue generation for city services.
While maximizing revenue generating opportunities.
Yeah, whatever, I just scribbled it as I
Yeah,
was thinking.
No, that's right, it's a good point.
Because,
You're right, that is the whole fundamental idea of EDC, was kind of
Yeah.
a flex to try and hit the market so we could,
Hmm.
so it would
So
work
it's
best for our city.
opportunities?
We'll come back with some language.
however you legally want to
Yeah.
word it, I don't care, as long as the idea is there.
Makes sense.
And then if we could go back to page 2, under policies, we have very similar wording. I think it's, again, it's important that we state what our goal here is in EDC, because it will help in battles later on when someone maybe wants to put a project in that isn't maybe beneficial for the city, but it's beneficial for the person. And so where we have A, B, C, D, E, F, I think we should add, either make it A or G, and the wording contribution to revenue generation opportunities for city services. That needs to be one of the policy points of the EDC,
Contribution to.
to revenue generation opportunities for city services. Basically saying the same thing.
Just, like I said, just hitting
Yeah.
it back and forth.
If you want to go on to page 4, does anyone else have anything on 3?
I've got nothing on 3, but,
What do you got on 4?
well, and 4.
Were you done on 3?
That's what I wanted to see, my other one. See, I didn't go
I think
back,
Lisa was,
I think. But I think it got taken out in E. The first draft
What page?
on, well,
Any-
on the old draft, the first draft, it's page 3. The third draft, it's page 4.
Ah.
Okay, but I just had a question, but I think it's been taken out. Can you, in the first draft, it kind of mentioned that the buffer and transitional use between Scott Road and the estate residential on the west side, the I-215. You know what, I understood that wrong. I thought the estates were located in the business park. Now that I read it again, it's not, so
Okay.
it's a buffer.
Right.
So, okay, but it's not in the new draft anyway. I think it was removed.
Where's that again? I'm sorry?
In E.
Let me get to my other E here.
All right, language in the Southern Gateway District was changed to remove the reference to the buffer.
Do we want a buffer between the estates in the southern area? I mean, or do you want the business, that the commercial park right next to the,
We could add language back
State.
in that references buffer, the same as we've got a buffer in the northern gateway.
That's this right here, right? Southern Gate, is that on
It's on the east side,
the east side?
yeah.
I would agree with some kind of buffer wording as well.
Oh, there we go.
And then also on the word where it says, and in the current version where it says in the third line, Scott Road interchange transitioning to office and residential, it should say minimal residential, because our main focus there is not housing. The only reason we'd be allowing housing would be as some kind of mixed use, but I would really want to encourage the word minimal there. Or even residential in the form of mixed use or something.
Well, rather than saying minimal, we can go back to that table and just put a number on that. That is on page
19.
19.
19,
They have 0 to
which
10%.
that would be more appropriate so that it's not convoluted.
Well, it's got-
10% is pretty minimal.
Okay.
Okay, all right, very good.
Well, like the Northern Gateway has 0 to 5, we could do the same.
Well, I think there's more
Got more space.
residential opportunity in the southern gateway
Okay.
than there are in the northern gateway, and more opportunity for mixed use and so forth.
But that's condos, correct, or apartments in the industrial?
Mixed use could be, yes.
There's already a development. Does it include the Menifee Alive or whatever, the one that's gone under? It used to be the golf driving range and it became something else and it became a condo and
And
it
then
went under.
Yeah,
Is that part of this? Yeah, that's part of
It's in
that.
there.
It's in there, so it's already
It's already there.
rated in there, yeah, so. Okay.
Well, and initially, when we talked about the EDC, we talked about limiting residential uses along the 215 corridor between Hahn and the 215, and then Antelope and the 215. Any residential uses would be on the backside, so that we capitalize on the freeway frontage.
Right, which is why you have language that residential isn't to face the freeway, isn't to abut the freeway.
Mhm.
Okay, and, okay, is there a buffer distance on that, or is it just cannot abut?
That's a judgment call when an individual project comes in for the commission, and probably council.
Where does that say that the housing must not abut the freeway? I read it somewhere.
Yeah, it's in the big,
Where is that?
Yeah, I can't pull it right out of the top of my head. That's working on too many words to remember where particular ones
I
are.
remember seeing
Uh-huh.
that too, and because we have those apartments on the northern side.
But-
And
So,
that-
so say that last part you said there, Charles, about having,
No.
I'd like to add
Oh,
back the
yes.
buffer and transitional.
We have a very clever attorney here, and he immediately found where it is that, what you're looking for. On the bottom of page 6, residential uses shall not exceed 15% of the total EDC corridor. Residential developments are not allowed as standalone projects, nor be allowed on EDC parcels directly adjacent to the freeway. Now, from now on, you refer to our attorney for finding any particular word in this chapter.
Well, should we add back, we didn't, on
I
that
think-
Southern Gateway, should we add back that buffer and transitional? Or
I
buffer?
agree.
definitely, I agree with that too. We need to definitely buffer the rural stuff that's down there on the south end, along the west side of the EDC area.
Now, there is, on the most eastern portion of that EDC in the Southern Gateway, there is an approved project by the county of a little strip that goes all along that, and it was called Bluestone Homes or Blue something. Is that still a viable project? Oh, no, that's still there. Oh, it's separate from that, Catalina, okay. It
Cambria.
is separate,
Yep.
okay. Never mind.
In that section E near the end, in the last sentence, small independent commercial and service venues. What's the reason for that? I mean, 'cause that excludes national chains from coming in?
No.
Even though it may be a small, but the way it is worded,
No, it makes it clear that the mixture of large and small are acceptable in that area.
Okay, so you got the buffer added in.
Mhm.
In the language 9.28040, about the middle,
What page?
page 4, in the very next paragraph. The conceptual master plan should describe the proposed development and its relationship to adjacent non-EDC properties. In order to keep the spirit alive of the EDC, I think we need to add something after that, as well as any existing developments, as well as any existing EDC, because the whole intent from our and get a consensus of the commission, but the whole intent of the EDC was to have these all kind of integrated and tied together in one shape or another. We don't want to have any one project completely and solely independent. Is that not the case? I'm not saying we leave, sidewalks to nowhere until the next guy comes and picks up where you leave off, but to some extent, we're saying that it should, show, the map should show its relationship to non-EDC properties, but it should also show its relationship to existing EDC properties.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Does the commission agree?
Yeah.
That's good. I had that underlined as well.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to, I like the paragraph in number 1A1. Prospective developers are encouraged to hold primary consultations with the community development director on the EC corridor. I think that's important. I'm glad that wording was in there.
I even circled encourage and said required and put a question mark. What does the commission think?
I like the encouraged.
Okay.
Yeah.
You cannot require a conceptual, because that is preliminary to a formal application. We
That's a part.
encourage as much as we can, but it's a choice on their part.
Well, there's just so much gray area so far through this, do we allow residential in this area? Do we not allow it in that area? There's wording in here that talks about so as not to have a prospective developer expend a lot of money to get to a certain point. You almost want to require them to come in here because, they're going to throw it back in our face and say, well, you never told me I couldn't do that. There isn't any way to require them to come and sit down and show what their thoughts are before they even pull the trigger on something?
You could create a category of review that is preliminary to a formal. But in and of itself, that would be formal. But you can create a category of submission that is more generic, more conceptual than a formal application, and require that to be submitted to the commission for initial review. The downside to that as a requirement is that once you've made comments to it, it has more validity in a developer's future argument that you accepted this or you accepted that as an acceptable mixture of things or as an acceptable height or things of that sort. Yes, I would, if that's what the commission wants, we will modify this language so that review, no matter what we call it, can be mandatory, but at a very generic conceptual level. We can certainly do that. But the downside is what I just said.
Well, the thought I'm having is that, I want to encourage development where it makes sense.
Mhm.
In these EDC areas is where it makes a lot of sense. But there's so much gray area and so much uncertainty with this new category. Somebody just coming into town out of the blue, picking up the land use code and trying to figure out what they could or couldn't have there, might even just turn them off to coming to Menifee.
You also have the situation where we're trying through this code to remove bureaucracy from the process. If you make this mandatory, that adds another level, another layer of mandatory review, submissions, processing by staff, presentation to commission, I would presume at a regular commission hearing and so forth. So the perception in the community of, or the development community of that aspect of it too also has to be considered.
Okay.
I think your concern's valid, and we get into this when the mom and pop come in and do a little
Yeah.
thing, but the people are gonna be, I think, coming into these projects to have so much money and the sophistication level, I think they'll be aware of the process.
I would love to agree with that.
No?
However,
Live in a perfect
but
world.
staff is always available to anyone that wants to chat about their property. And for the most part, depending upon their level of chat and their sophistication, most times that is not charged in any way, shape, or form. When they come in with a project that they really want to try to, quote, sell, end quote, to the city, yes, we make them go through a little bit more formal process because there's a little bit more of a review to it. But if you're just chatting with us, it's free, and we encourage that as much as we can.
That means we're open for business.
Yeah.
That's good.
I do have a question that you brought up, Matt, about the housing limitation.
Mhm.
We have a specific plan in the town center, which includes at build-out about 1,000 housing units,
1,038.
1,038.
1,038.
Now, there's a 15% max housing in the entire EDC. So that means if, and I asked this when we were doing the general plan several ways, very pointedly, if one area, say it's up north here in the McCall, say, and they take all 15% of strictly housing, there can't be another house down in the rest of the EDC. It was taken as an EDC as a whole. So have we already lost that 15% by the specific plan in the town center?
It's not included.
The town center is not included in the EDC. And in addition, the answer that was given at the time to that question was that if a project were to come in, and if the city said, yes, this is a good project for the city, and approved it, and then that ate up the 15%, and then someone else came in with a project and said, here's what I want to do, and in review of that, it was found to be a project that would be beneficial to the community, just like with the industrial, we could change the general plan and the development code to modify those numbers in order to accommodate that. These are the standards that will be applicable, the entire development code will be the standards for development within the community. But they're also meant to be a tool to benefit the community. So if it has to be modified in the future to the benefit of the community, the council can do that.
Now, that 15% is not only in this development code, but I believe it is in the land use.
It is
definition.
absolutely
So it will
in-
take a general plan amendment to exceed that, right?
Yes.
Okay, then we got the lock on that, okay.
But as development goes forward, the city staff, commission, council will look at that and say, we're experiencing more development of this kind in this area than we had thought. Let's start looking at a general plan amendment in dealing with this topic and that topic and that topic, and then we go through that. Part of your responsibilities as a commission is to annually decide whether or not you think there are changes to the general plan that would be advantageous to the community, and ask the council to authorize that those changes, that staff time and energy be committed to those changes.
Okay. So we got through page 4. Anything on page 5? Anybody have any questions on page 5?
I have some comments. Does anyone else have any comments on 5?
I do as well. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Section 4, I thought was too open-ended, and it didn't have any level of certainty. So let me read it. The Community Development Director may require presentation of the conceptual master plan to the Planning Commission for its input and guidance. The presentation shall be for informational purposes. Commission review of the conceptual master plan shall be open to the public. So,
I like it.
sorry? You like it?
But I like it.
Well, I guess, again, catering to the mom and pops, that they're coming into town and want to start a business, there's no degree of certainty. So if they want to do something, it's, okay, you come see the community development director. And if you don't like it, then it goes to the planning commission, but then they're not, at what point does something come to the planning commission as an entire package? Because we talked about not spending a lot of money to get to a certain point to say you've got a viable project. But in order for something to come to the planning commission, it's gotta have enough substance to it where we can sit here and digest what the project is. So
Yes.
again, they're still coming to the planning commission with no degree of certainty that the project could ever be approved.
Correct. That's the point of a conceptual plan, is to look at it, to get a feel from the commission that this mixture at this location is acceptable or unacceptable.
Well, I thought that was the whole intent of this entire chapter, was to define what was acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Correct, but you can't define, without it being a horrendously large document, every possible contingency. This gives, and is hopefully friendly enough, where if a mom and pop comes in and they've got this particular corner and it's something that's consistent with the allowed uses and could be built under the development standards, then the conceptual plan wouldn't be necessary and I wouldn't have to bring it to you. They could make the formal submission and go through that process. You could have someone come in, like the gentleman here, that has the idea of we want to do this kind of activity within the area, and okay, we need more information. It's something that the commission needs to review, so we would like you to submit a conceptual plan, and here's the criteria that's applicable to the submission of a conceptual plan. Then that would be scheduled before the commission for you to look at, consider, and discuss back and forth with the applicants.
Okay.
Right. So my question then would be, because it does say may require, it doesn't shall require.
Correct.
So what are the exceptions that you would approve and then we would never see?
That would be a judgment call based upon the discussions I would have with the applicant.
Like, for instance, we had the one girl come before us who wanted to do the shaved ice,
Mhm.
and she came and talked about her idea. We gave her information, suggest she talk to you, and now she's moving forward with that process.
Mhm.
And we never
Well,
saw it, so
and-
that was,
And this is a situation as well. I couldn't stop an applicant from submitting a conceptual plan asking that it go to the planning commission. This gives me a mechanism that this kind of the things that they are suggesting are small enough or fit well enough into a particular location that a conceptual wouldn't be necessary. But if they wanted to bring it to you, the formal submission of the conceptual plans would take it out of my hands for a decision, and it would have to be presented to you,
is a conceptual plan the same as the workshops like we have?
fundamentally.
So it's not,
But
it's
with a bit more detail, though. They have to give
not a
more
public
detail.
hearing.
No, it is not a public hearing.
Okay.
It is at a meeting that is open to the public, but is not a public hearing.
So then, let me clarify, then this is basically talking about a workshop, and then, so if you would deem it not necessary, basically for them to come forward with a workshop, and you would work with them, and then they would still come forward to the commission with,
A formal submission.
okay.
Mhm. A plot plan review, a conditional
Okay.
use permit, whatever was called for based upon their particular use.
All right, thank you for clearing that up.
If I remember in the general plan discussions, one of the things that I personally wanted required was that the planning commission review anything going into the EDC, and I think I'd be more comfortable, not that I'm questioning your judgment,
Mhm.
but this is such a critical area to protect. I would like to add wording that the planning commission see every conceptual plan for the EDC.
I would discourage that because a lot of those conceptual plans may be so poor that it would be a tremendous waste of your time and the city's resources. And if they felt strongly that I simply misunderstood their proposal or misunderstood the rules here, they could always formally submit the conceptual plan which mandates that I bring it to you.
Oh,
What, the likelihood of a project being approved in the EDC without us seeing it is probably
Small.
It's slim.
Yeah, when you look at this, when you look at the
So
Not
chart,
that it'd be approved, but that I would like you keep saying, like this, them to come to us before they sink a bunch of money in it, so we could have a hand in designing it.
but sometimes there are people that simply want what they want.
Yeah.
they've got their corporate, we won't mention a tire dealership, but they've got their corporate logos, their corporate design, and so forth, that they as individual franchisees or simply as part of the bigger company want to bring forward to you for a formal decision on it. And so going through a conceptual review is going to lead to very little more than what staff would already provide to them as far as, discussion of requirements, conditions, things of that sort.
I'll even go a step further. I don't think the commission should have a hand in deciding or designing a project. There should be some level of certainty as to what somebody's gonna be getting into. If they've gotta sit up here in a public forum, with a panel of 5 people and have them decide how they're gonna spend their money, they're
No.
definitely not gonna come to Menifee.
No.
And again, it's that additional mandatory level of bureaucracy that sends a message to the development community.
Well,
And if it's poor enough, then he'll push it up to us,
okay.
and ultimately, it's going to come to us anyway in the form of a plot plan or a track map or a
Conditional use
Conditional use
permit or
permit.
something.
use permit.
Okay. Okay, anything else? I got something else.
Go ahead, I'm good on R5.
If you look at D on the top, the D is the last part, if you go to page 4 of the review process of this
Conceptual.
conceptual review. And it talks about proposed land, they're gonna describe in this master plan, conceptual master plan, the proposed land use, the developed concepts to be employed, schematics, and it's in D, it says a preliminary time schedule for development, including quantitative data, housing, units, land acreage, but it doesn't talk about being that the EDC is mostly commercial, retail, and industrial. I think after the word housing units, we need to add the word, commercial, retail, and industrial types and uses. Because we're telling them,
But
give us
that's proposed land uses, so they would have to provide to you those proposed land uses.
That's item A.
Bottom of page
a
4,
district.
A.
So what are we saying in D then? Preliminary time schedule for development.
D is, you often, as a commission, ask, are you ready to come in now? You often ask, are you going to do this soon? Is this something that's a year away, 5 years away?
Or you
And
gonna
what
flip
this condition is saying, in order for you as a commission and the council, as a council, to have some idea of what else may develop around them and how to interact with those other developments, we need some kind of a schedule. Is this something where you're getting approval now and then you're going to sell it, so anticipate development in 3 years from now? Or is it something that you are hot to develop now, so we want the city's approval and then
Well, exactly, so we're saying basically, give us an approximate schedule.
Correct.
But you're asking for everything except the actual project here. You're
But
asking for,
it's already asked for, so you don't
but
need
not
to.
on the schedule, though. You're asking for the schedule of everything except the actual project.
Well, that's what development, a preliminary schedule for development.
Yeah, the development is the
That's the
land
project.
uses that are,
Okay, if everyone else sees it that way, that's fine.
see, if you squint and turn your head, that's the way it reads.
Okay. And then my other comment is on 3D, and nothing to change, but I just wanted to make a comment. It says one of the things that, when they're submitting a commercial project, one of the things that we encourage them to do is determine is it a fit, is it a fit for our population? What's the effective buying power? And D, it says determine the net potential customer buying power. I think that's exactly why we need to remember when we're approving projects, especially on housing, what kind of purchasing power is that housing going to bring? Because that will determine what kind of store is going to go in that spot. So just wanted to bring that out, so nothing to change, and that's it for 5.
Okay, let's hold off for right now. We do have our meeting was agendized, so we do need to open that and allow for public comment if we have any. So we'll call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, can you take roll?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Phillips,
Present?
Commissioner Sobek,
Here?
Commissioner Thomas,
Here,
Vice Chair Metelko,
Here.
Chair Leesmeyer.
Here. All right, we all please rise for the flag salute. Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, Thank you. There are no agenda modifications,
No, sir.
no presentations,
No, sir.
and speaker slip.
Yes, Katie Manier.
Hey, just for you.
I like bigger audiences, honestly, but I'll take it. Since corruption, lies, and cover-up seem to plague this city, let me share another little dirty secret. Last spring, the mayor and city manager hosted a forum to address the decades of toxic waste dumped in our community. At that forum, the mayor and city manager, along with the county, told the public that all records had been destroyed. Earlier this year, City Attorney Biggs and City Clerk Kathy Bennett stated that those records, due to the nature of the subject, were not destroyed. Matt Leesmeyer, as chairman of the Planning Commission, I am asking you, on the record, to direct staff to obtain the years of permits and records with regards to the dumping of sewer sludge on fields in Menifee. All records that are on file, saved on disk with the county, needed to ensure the health and safety of the community, are to be requested and sent to the city. Since you promote that public safety is a priority on your campaign page, isn't that what you stand for? It doesn't set well with me that Lori Stone, sister of Supervisor Jeff Stone, refers to the toxic sludge as fluff. For the record, she is also your campaign manager, I believe. If your duty as a planning commissioner is to approve development projects, wouldn't this make sense to make sure the project doesn't set on toxic waste? Or is that a conflict of interest since you are a contractor and a friend of Case and Klein and other developers who are funding your campaign? I will make time in my busy schedule this week to review your findings and see if they are complete. I am sure the new attorney hired doesn't want to be in the middle of any cover-ups or corruption and will make sure all records are delivered and reviewed. I am sure copies will be given to Vice Chair Metalco to verify their legitimacy. I am sure you want to prove to the public how sincere, honest, and transparent you are.
No further speakers, sir.
Thank you, Katie. You are correct. In fact, I did do a little bit of research on that, and I did find some of the information that I've been looking for. It's on the agenda from 5/1/2012 from the city council meeting. I am going through all that, and once I get through that, we'll see where I sit.
Will you request those records like I've asked?
Again, what I have requested is what's available online on the website on the 5/21 or 5/1/2012 agenda, and that's what I'm going through right now. It's all part of the staff report from that date. No more?
No.
Okay. Approval of our meeting minutes from September 10th?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
See nothing on our consent calendar. We do not have any public hearings tonight.
No, sir.
Mr. Leclerc, do you have any discussion items?
No, sir.
Any comments?
No, sir.
Okay. Any commissioner comments to add tonight?
I have one.
Okay. Sure.
Well, go ahead. Go first. You had one.
Commissioner Sobek and I attended an environmental leadership academy that was held up in Julian, and it was fairly informative. There are actually 4 sessions. We attended the first one. They covered a number of topics, and I'm still working on the PowerPoint. I haven't finished it yet, but there are some pretty good takeaways that we can use in Menifee, and I wanted to go through my notes and be sure that I have them framed properly so that you can gain an understanding of what we were exposed to up there. All in all, I kind of wish that we could make this a thing for all of the commissioners to attend, because the exposure not only to other sponsors, you know, like the energy industry, the utilities that help put on this thing, but other decision makers in other cities. And so a lot of very good information can be ferreted out during those sessions.
Good.
I agree. I actually brought you back, those who didn't go, I brought you back a packet
on one of our workshops we attended. It's an overview of the California land use entitlements and CEQA. So I have a packet for each of you of the PowerPoint presentation we were given.
Thank you
It
very
was,
much.
it was taught in layman terms, and that was a very educational and good workshop. We learned a lot on how things are connected, you know, and the decisions that we make, how it affects our community, not just here, but down the road and this and beyond. We had a tribal representative there on the Indian tribes. It was very.
Which tribe?
She was, I don't have my, she didn't represent one tribe. She represented any tribe. She was from the organization, which I didn't have my notes that prepared that great for tonight. But she was a resource where you go to.
Right.
Um,
Her name was Lenore Lamb. She was with the BIA.
The
here in
BIA.
Yeah, Southern California.
Yeah.
That's not the tribe.
No, it's not the
She
tribe, it's the
represents-
whole, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Indian Affairs.
Not the
But
Building
she-
Industry
She
Association.
gave
No.
us, she gave a great workshop, very educational. We had a workshop about LAFCO and the environment, and it was amazing how he talked about the fires and the fire situations and how the costs and how we hadn't had a huge fire yet. And then here, right when we got home, we've had these fires up in Northern California. And down to the local level, he even shared how we save money in our cities by the type of fire program, I guess you could say, we have, where you have 2 in, 1 out, or 2 in, 2 out. And in some of the cities, they've changed it where they have is it 4?
What about the ingress egress into
Yes.
development?
But they upped it 1, and by doing that, they saved money, actually, by doing that, because they saved lives and they saved time. And it was just a lot of different workshops over those 2 days, and I'm glad that I found out that Commissioner Phillips was going after our last commission meeting, because he didn't get the email that he was supposed to bring his own sleeping bag, or he would have in a bunk. So it was good. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Mr. Leclerc?
Thank you. The comments here reminded me that our new city attorney is available to present to the commission a environmental workshop, so that you have a CEQA workshop, so that it brings the commission a little bit closer to current CEQA laws and your responsibilities and requirements. I had Rattan and Tucker as city attorneys for 29 Palms, and we had one of the attorneys there, I believe twice, give the CEQA workshop. And I would ask that you consider that and schedule an appropriate time where you as a group could have that workshop. It would be easier on the attorneys to have it during the afternoon, but if it can't be arranged because of your schedules, then like a 6 o'clock meeting would be acceptable as well.
Did you get time and a half after 7 o'clock or something?
No, he's billed at a specific time,
Check.
up to a number of hours.
Well, one thing I learned about CEQA, there were people there who've been dealing with it for 10,
Decades.
15, 20 years, and they still don't know the whole thing. So
Right.
I would
it
encourage it.
might be
Yeah.
good, do you think, after the election, and we, because we're so close to it, to just kind of, it might be good for if there's any changes on the commission.
Yeah, and I'll make
Be
sure,
wise money spent that way.
in addition to a workshop or a study session, I'll make sure to send out updates to all of you with significant new case law and changes to statutes and things like that, just to keep you updated as well.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage a workshop, because, you know, it's good to go back every once in a while and look at your fundamentals and look at what your, what your real intent is. You know, we do need to go back through and do that. So I think the sooner the better, because we will constantly have projects, and going through development codes and understanding what CEQA is all about, and all that stuff is very important.
Yeah, I just felt like by attending that workshop that I can make better decisions, and that was my goal of going, is to learn more so I can make better decisions for our city as a whole, and so it's been good.
Okay, any other commissioner comments?
Yeah, I have one, and it relates actually to our development thing here. It was a legal case or a crime case on the news just yesterday or day before, something I heard about, San Bernardino, where a woman was growing her up to 91 or whatever it is, pot plants you can grow.
99, I guess.
99, I guess. And a neighbor is in an apartment building, and they had a little, grass area or whatever in the back. And a neighbor had been going down and snipping little pieces every once in a while. So she caught wind of this, and he went down one day to do it, and this woman shot him and killed him.
Ooh.
So what the San Bernardino has is a ordinance that says these pot plants can only be grown in an indoor area, which I would imagine is used as a method of restricting where these things can be. So we have on page 6, the next page we were going to go over, and it's in 9.28.050, uses restricted to indoor activities. I would encourage us to, and I don't know the full legalities or code, maybe Mr. Leclerc does, adding, I don't know if this is a place to do it or if that's an ordinance that the city council does or whatever, but to add similar wording.
The city council is already considering
The
change
indoor
to the,
nature of it?
right.
Okay, good. Now, should we put something in the development code? We have restricted indoor activities.
I'm not sure you want to draw the attention to it, but I will discuss what is being proposed to the council and see if it would be appropriate to
But
fit it in
If
here.
it's not appropriate, fine. I just wanted to see if we can put as much teeth everywhere to make it as difficult as possible for these people to do business in our city.
Mhm.
And the other good thing about not having it, making it indoors, is it's not, an attractive nuisance to crime and other things as much. So, that was my thought.
I
Any other commissioner comments? Okay,
I-
with that, we entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we can pick back up at the workshop if everybody wants to, or we can call it a night. I think Mr. Leclerc would prefer that we try and get some more done if we can. How's the commission feel?
I wish I had more time to
Yeah,
actually
same.
decipher this third.
Right. My original
Draft.
suggestion was at a point where I anticipated that you would give up everything else in your life and read this code so that you'd be 100% ready for tonight. But realizing, and it is my fault, realizing that we only gave it to you, or some of you, yesterday morning, and you do have lives that take up your daytime, that it may be a little difficult to get through. So we apologize for that, and it is up to the commission, but you need to feel comfortable with what you're discussing, so you need to have read it so that you can feel comfortable with it. I would also like to raise a point. We stopped at a particular point in the development code, page 20 of the other chapters. As you have already indicated, Mr. Phillips, Commissioner Phillips will be working with me on this, so we're going to go back to that chapter, possibly end. We will go back to chapter 916, Community Development Director Decisions, and we'll work through those materials, and we will give you substitute pages with the yellow highlighted for the changes. So if you haven't already, okay, but if you have, sorry, we will give you new pages to substitute for your future discussions.
And again, those changes that you're giving us are just grammatical, dotting i's, crossing t's. They're nothing
Right.
fundamental.
A lot of it
No,
is, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
A lot of it is.
yeah, I purposely looked at it from that point.
okay,
Readability, syntax, grammar.
okay.
Right, it's helpful to have someone that doesn't speak plannerese put some of the language down, because
Yeah.
it is true that planners will read this, but it's truer that more people in the, the mom and pop,
Well, you
more
get- you-
developers will
you
read
get,
it as well.
You get what painters call whitewash.
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. No, that sounds great. Thanks, Earl. Does anybody have any, okay, well, if it sounds like we're gonna pick up on the next meeting, but does anybody have any big glaring issues with EDC they need questions resolved with right now to continue working forward? I don't wanna shut everybody down if there's a,
Well, I
one
just-
big question.
You know what, I just have a question, and it's already taken place, and I'm wondering, what my question is did this happen because we didn't have the code? When I was looking at the Newport designation in the EDC, it talks about, well, the Newport Road district provides neighborhood-oriented commercial office and institutional uses that support residential communities. And I was wondering how, which include a little bit of Bradley, I believe, but how this liquor store got approved right next to the neighborhood and how the pub got approved right next to a church. I just was wondering those things as I was reading this and thinking of the
Well,
neighborhoods.
This code hasn't been adopted yet.
Right, is
this
it
code-
because we don't have a code?
Correct.
Is that why those things got?
Right. They were allowed under whatever review mechanism was in place at the time that they were reviewed, through standards from the county, or maybe the city, but more likely county. And that's one of the impetus behind creating your own code here, so that when you have issues of that sort, you can address it by creating standards that don't allow that, for whatever the reasons are, as long as they're legitimate reasons, for not allowing those activities or that level of activity in the EDC and in other zones as you go through this entire code.
Okay, that was just a thought that I had as a question I had as I was reading this.
You
We
do,
don't
you'll
want
have
more
the
of that.
non-conform, you'll have the existing non-conforming chapter.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other big fundamental, why are we here questions? Okay. We've already adjourned, so we can go home.